Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. We got through all of Sunday, and now all we have left is Monday Night Football for this week, which is Carolina at San Francisco. So let's look into the data of that game. So starting off with our game data, you have San Francisco favored on the money line with a spread of 7.5 and a total line of 49.5. And then here's your seasonal average data. And then looking at our rankings, with Carolina, you have about an average offense with a pretty good rushing rank, top third, but an average passing rank, and then pretty bad for scoring for themselves. And then defensively, they're a little below average with an allowed passing rank of 24 and an allowed rushing rank of 20. They do a little better here than their defense with this allowed scoring rank of 14, though. For San Francisco, you have a bunch of mixed results for their rankings. So you have a really good passing rank with the number one passing rank in the league, but they're pretty bad with their rushing rank at 25, and their scoring rank becomes about average with all of that. Similar story for their defense, with an allowed scoring rank of 16. However, their allowed passing rank is 31, and their allowed rushing rank is about average with 17. Starting off with our quarterbacks, you have Bryce Young and Brock Purdy, with Bryce Young averaging 12.9 fantasy points per game, and Brock Purdy averaging 17.9. Bryce Young has 7 interceptions this season, with 2 fumbles lost due to sacks, and then 2 additional rushing fumbles. Brock Purdy has 4 interceptions, with 1 additional fumble lost due to a sack. And then here's your player averages, and looking at their carry share to see if they impact the rushing game. You have Bryce Young with about 7.6% of the team's rushing carry share, and about 6.2% of the rushing yard share, so he doesn't have too much of an impact for Carolina on the rushing game. And then over here with Purdy, he actually has none of the carry share right now because he has so few, with so few weeks. And then next up we have our running backs with Rico Dowdle and Christian McCaffrey. Rico averages 14.7 fantasy points per game, and Christian McCaffrey has been averaging 25.8. Neither of them have given up turnovers this season, so we'll just move to their averages. And then looking at their carry share, you have Dowdle with 55.6% of the team's rushing carry share, and 62% of the team's rushing yard share. And then with Christian McCaffrey, you get about 68% of the team's rushing carry share, and 68.6% of the team's rushing yard share. We also know McCaffrey gets quite a few receiving yards, so we'll see that more with the other receivers and how he stacks up next to them. So looking at our number one receivers, you have Ted Toroa, McMillan, and Juwan Jennings. McMillan averaging 13.9 fantasy points per game, and Juwan Jennings averaging 19.8. The only turnovers come from Juwan Jennings with 1 receiving fumble, and other than that, we'll look at their averages. And then with their share, McMillan gets about 28.2% of the team's target share, and about 34.8% of the team's receiving yard share. That's also the largest by far of anybody else on the team. Otherwise, it's much more spread out and much more even between the rest of the players. But he clearly gets the largest chunk here. Juwan Jennings gets about 17.2% of the team's target share and about 14.3% of the team's receiving yard share. That would make him about the 3rd most productive receiver, but that is behind Christian McCaffrey here, which I think is about this 29.5% and 27.8% of the team's total target share and receiving yard share. So not only does McCaffrey own most of the rushing for this team, he also owns most of the receiving for the team. Our number 2 receivers are Xavier Legette and Ricky Pearsall. Legette averaging 7.6 fantasy points per game, and Pearsall averaging 10.6. With no turnovers given up between the 2 receivers, we'll just look at their averages. And then their share, with Xavier getting about 14.6% of the team's target share and 12.3% of the team's receiving yard share. That does appear to make him the 2nd most productive receiver on Carolina. And with Pearsall, we can't quite see these numbers, but we can see them either you can go back or we can see them in the tight ends. But I think for the target share, it's probably about 8%. And then for the receiving share, I'm going to guess about 10 to 12%. Wrapping up with the tight ends, you have Jatravion Sanders and George Kittle, with Sanders averaging 5.1 fantasy points per game, and George Kittle averaging 13.6. Once again, neither of these tight ends have any turnovers, so we'll look at their averages. And then their share, with Sanders getting about 9.2% of the team's target share and 7.9% of the team's receiving yard share. And then with Kittle, you get about 9.2% of the team's target share and 9.5% of the team's receiving yard share. So there's everything for this game. We'll have to see how this matchup works out because you have this strong passing rank from San Francisco against a fairly weak pass defense. However, you also have a pretty good rushing team with Carolina against about an average rush defense from San Francisco. So really in the end, I always go back to the scoring ranks because that's about putting points on the board. And here, San Francisco is a little better at putting points on the board than Carolina. And they both have pretty close to the same allowed scoring rank. So that would just indicate to me that San Francisco holds the advantage in scoring in this game. So based on just those numbers, I would lean more towards San Francisco taking this game. So there's everything for Monday Night Football. I hope that you enjoyed and got something out of it, and if you did, leave a like and subscribe, and otherwise leave a comment on what other data you want to see in the future. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next for the Thanksgiving lineup.